Okay, time being 6:30, I'd like to call this meeting to order. First up, we have the traditional territory acknowledgement. The Council of the Township of Red Rock hereby acknowledges that we are on the traditional territory of the Robinson Superior Treaty and that the land we gather on is home to the Red Rock Indian Band, the Anishinaabe, and Métis people. Can I have a mover and seconder for a motion to accept the agenda as presented? Councillor Muir, Councillor Smith. See anything? All in favor? Motion's carried. Any disclosure of interest? Seeing none. We will now move into the closed session portion of the meeting. Can I have a mover and seconder to go into closed session? Councillor Smith, Councillor Muir. All in favor? Motion's carried. Time being 6:31. So rising from closed session, council discussed items that were printed in the agenda. We do not need to go into closed session again. Okay, so tonight we have Kristen from MNP here to discuss the financial audit of the township for 2024. So thank you for coming.
Great, thanks for having me. All right, well, another year is coming past and we have another year of audited financial statements for council to approve this evening. I'm going to go through, I guess, some of the highlights of the financial statements. I won't go through every single page, or we could be here for a while, but I'll go through the main parts. And if you have any questions, more than happy to answer. So I'm going to start on the main set of financial statements. So the Township of Red Rock, the consolidated financial statements. And I'm going to start, I guess, maybe 3 pages in and on the independent auditor's report for those of you that are following along. So similar to last year, there is a qualification in the audit report, and you'll have to bear with me as I kind of go through the same topic again this year. But the qualification is in regards to the fact that the township hasn't adopted the asset retirement obligation standard that did come into effect last year. And previous to that, it would have been the landfill liability site. So the asset retirement obligation standard now includes the landfill, but also includes things like any buildings that would have asbestos removal, underground fuel storage tanks. If you had properties that had to be remediated before they went to another party or anything along those lines, that would all kind of fall into this particular standard. So that hasn't been done in these financial statements, but you guys aren't the only municipality that isn't, I guess, following these standards. Some of the larger ones like Thunder Bay, Dryden, Kenora, Fort Francis, Shunya, they all have the ARO obligation, but some of the smaller ones that I do as well do not. So I know it's a cost benefit analysis because there is a fair bit of work that would have to be done to do this. There would have to be costing reports done by engineering firms. I do believe that you guys are looking at getting pinched into the landfill. So that's one piece of it. So that's a step in the right direction. And if we wanted to become fully compliant, it would just be looking at if there was any asbestos removal or anything else that would fall into that guideline. So perhaps maybe in the future, maybe we can remove this down the line, but that's really the only qualification that would be in these financial statements would be that particular one there. Everything else is in accordance with public sector accounting standards. So I'm not too sure if there's any questions on that, but that's kind of the highlight there of that page. The only other thing I wanted to highlight there is right after that basis for qualified opinion, there's a paragraph called Other Matters. And this is unique to this particular year. And it's basically saying that last year's financial statements were audited by another auditor, which is kind of silly because it was me both years, but last year we were with BDO, this year we're with MNP. So we have to put that little sentence in there as well. So that will disappear for next year, but that's the only thing that would be substantially different from the previous year's audit report. The rest goes on to talk about responsibilities for all the parties. So management does all the day-to-day bookkeeping, designs internal controls to safeguard assets. Council's responsibility is to make sure all the questions are asked and you feel comfortable approving the financial statements. And then it goes on to talk about the auditor's responsibility in a little bit of detail. So mainly making sure the standards are followed, looking at internal controls, providing a management letter if we have any suggestions, which I believe you've already gone through, and things like that. So that's all included in there. So any questions on the audit report before moving on to some of the numbers?
Councillor Muir.
Yeah, just quickly want to note the
Sure.
asset retirement. I think when that came out in 2023, it's financially unfeasible for a small municipality to have had it done in that timeline. It's not possible. It wasn't possible when it came out. So it's not a surprise that, but at some point, it will get done. The landfill was on there for many years. So it was just a huge cost that honestly, and it's going to be a lot of work to get done. So
Yeah, it was a humongous standard, in all honesty. It was a very
Yeah.
large one that came out.
yeah, there should have been more time given to the small municipalities for sure, or a level of funding to help it get done.
Well, and that's the thing too, right? A lot of municipalities have made the similar comment is that if you want to be in accordance with these public sector accounting standards, is there funding to get in accordance with it? Because there is a cost that's associated with it for sure. At the end of the day, what it really means is that there should be probably an additional liability set up on the financial statements just to know that that cost isn't today's cost per se, but down the road, that obligation will have to be remediated, right? So that's the whole point of the standard. But yes, it's a time consuming, it's a costly thing to implement and something to strive towards, I guess, would be kind of my comment there. Yep. Okay. So if we skip along, I guess the next page number there that we'll start on, I think is page 6, which is the consolidated statement of financial position. So this particular page outlines all the assets and liabilities of the township at December 31st, 2024, and the comparative period there for 2023. I'm going to kind of walk through each section there. So financial assets would be items that would be easily convertible into cash. So the total number that's coming in there is a little over $5 million. The larger items that are included in that would be cash, which is sitting there at about 2.6 million, which does look higher than the previous year, but you'll notice the next line there, the short-term investments were all cashed in during the year. Included in that cash, there's a couple different categories. There's bank accounts for external restrictions. So any of your gas tax, any of your OSIF funding, that's set aside in special bank accounts. You have internally funded reserves that would be included in that as well. There's also a high interest savings account of 500,000, which really kind of is part of the short-term investments from the previous year, just classified a little bit differently. So all that's included there in the 2.6. I guess one thing to mention, I think that administration does a good job of setting aside money in all of the reserves. That's not always the case with every organization I'm looking at. So I think that you guys do a very good job of making sure that cash is in separate bank accounts and accounted for. So that's a good thing. So kind of continuing down this category here, we've got taxes receivable, about 218,000. Last year was 244, so down a little bit, but there was one property that was vested, so it kind of moved from that taxes receivable line down into the inventory held for resale category. So taxes receivable went down, but your inventory held went up, and that's primarily due to the one property. Accounts and grants receivable, that's kind of always fluctuates depending on what kind of capital projects are ongoing and when all the funding's received. So a big portion of that 1.8 million would be money from Infrastructure Canada, Ministry of Infrastructure, as well as your HST rebates. So the big projects around would have been the rec center, would have probably been the biggest ones that's all included in there for funding that would have been received after December. And then user charges receivable would be water and sewer balances that are outstanding at December. So that's kind of the financial assets section. The liability section, we have total 3.953 million. What you can kind of see there is the bank indebtedness line kind of sticks out at a little over $1 million. So the line of credit that was used, I know with the rec center and the water treatment plant, some of the costs had to be covered up front. So a line of credit was obtained to pay for some of those costs before those receivables came due. So that's been repaid after year end. So that's sitting at 0, but was a little over 1 million at December 31st. Accounts payable and accrued liabilities, 688,000. Mainly includes, probably the biggest item in there would be an amount that was owed to some of the contractors around year end, as well as the last payment to the school boards. Also things would be just general day-to-day payables that would be paid in January, and wages and source deductions would all be in there. Vested sick leave, that's a small number that's coming in there, around 61,000. Deferred revenue, 648,000. down from the previous year, but there is some larger balances still sitting there with the gas tax and the OSIF. I think I would have to say that I guess you guys are meeting your requirements in regards to the spending for this. And I know that probably some big projects are going to be upcoming here, maybe with some bridge work would probably be my guess that would probably be utilized some of this funds. So it's just kind of tucked away there for a specific purpose in the future. Long-term debt came in at about 1.5 million. That's the 3 debentures that the township has on hand. So all in all there, we've got your total liabilities of 3.9 million. And then the net financial assets is the difference between your financial assets and your liabilities. And this is sitting, it did decrease from the previous year, but it's still over $1 million. And the fact that it's positive, I think, is a good news story. There's some municipalities that are in a negative position. So really what this means is that you do have enough cash on hand or liquid assets to pay off any liabilities. So that's kind of sitting in there. And then down below is your non-financial assets. So things that aren't easily convertible into cash, primarily your capital assets. So that's sitting on the books at about 36 million. 3.1 million in additions this year. So another year of large capital asset projects, whether it be the water treatment plant, lift stations, the rec center. I know that there was some repaving done on Front Street, some ice making equipment, fire equipment, all totaled up there. So another year of kind of continued investment into infrastructure. And kind of the last line here, and we'll go through that maybe a little bit later, is the total of everything, the accumulated surplus there at $37,155,566. So moving on to the next page, this would be your consolidated statement of operations and accumulated surplus that shows all the revenues and expenses for the year. So similar to the previous page, but this year we have the budget, or there's another column, I should say. There's a budget column and then the actuals as well. So we can see here the top half of the page lists all the revenues. So all the revenues came in at about 6.3 million. Kind of going through the different categories of revenue, we've got your taxation, whether that's broken up by residential, commercial, or tax from other governments. All of those 3 lines total about 1.75. You got your user charges, your water and sewer billings, 478,000. Other fees and service charges would be things like your province or provincial offenses, your tipping fees, your marina charges, also some funding that was received from the Federation of Canadian Municipalities would all be included in that 351. Government transfers, so we've broken it up by federal and provincial, so 1.2 versus 2.3. A lot of the federal one is Infrastructure Canada, also some gas tax as well as Parks Canada. Provincial would be your OMPF funding, Ministry of Infrastructure, Ministry of Northern Development and Mines. And then other revenue kind of rounds everything out. So you got your permits, licenses, and fines, which would be your building permits, your penalties and interest on any outstanding tax or water and sewer payments. And investment income still quite high for 2024, 86,000. So that would be interest on any of the bank accounts as well as any of the GICs. And then some land sales there, rounding everything out at 36,000. On the expense side, you can see there that everything totals 4,484,000. Very consistent with the budget, very consistent with last year. So there's not too much of a swing year over year. So I think that's, kind of says that the budgeting process is working, as well as the fact that the numbers are very consistent year over year. So it's just broken down into all the different segments, whether it's general government, protection to persons and property would be police, fire, ambulance. Transportation services would be your public works, your roads, your bridges, all of that. Environmental would be your water, your wastewater. Health would be the health unit contribution. Social and family services would be DSAB. And then rec and cultural would be your marina, parks, and community programming. And planning and development would be your municipal planning, building codes, property development, all that type of stuff. So at the end of the day here, from a PSAS accounting purpose, you had a surplus there of $1,855,047. So maybe I'll pause. That was a lot of numbers on both of the pages. So I'll just stop to see if anyone has any questions on anything I've kind of gone through.
Chris, do you have any questions?
Not at this time, thank you.
Okay. Counselor Muir.
Yeah, just a comment on the net financial assets and then the, looking at the budgeting sheet, I mean, that shows the diligence administration's taken with the budgeting process and the management of the budget process. So this is just a display of how well that administration has done their job here. So kudos to Mark and his team, because this is a good looking budget for a municipality.
Yep. Yeah, I would have to say I've been involved maybe 5 years now, and I think we've come a long way over the 5 years and working together and kind of getting everything straight and everything that we're looking for. So it's been a very positive development, I think, over the last few years, and you can really see the budgeting process come through as well. So, all right, if there's no questions, the only other thing I kind of wanted to go through, if you'll bear with me for a little bit longer, if we could go to, I would like to go to note 8. Which I think is on page 21. So a ways down there. There we go. That's the one. I don't know if I normally go through this one in particular, but I thought it might help maybe put a little bit of perspective into your budgeting process versus the PSAS accounting kind of piece here. So we just talked about what the annual surplus was which was that 1.8 million. And the change between these two numbers, the 37 and the 35, is that 1.8. And it kind of just shows where your surplus has gone each year. You can see there. So you can see that very first line, your investment in tangible capital assets, that's gone up about 2.2 million. So that's where a large piece of that surplus went. The unfunded debt would be the debenture. So you can see that that slowly has been decreasing. There's about 60,000 in principal repayments there. That current funds is that 55,924. That's the library surplus for the year. So that changes depending on a surplus or deficit with the library. You'll see there that the unallocated surplus from general operations, that number's dropped about 490,000. And that's because a portion of your rec center, for the most part, was funded internally through a debenture from the previous year. So that drops really just relating to the fact that you guys had to come up with the debenture debt to cover that particular cost. And then you can see all your reserves there. And your reserves have gone up about 72,000, which is primarily the interest that's been earned. So all those ups and downs, that matches that 1.8 million that we talked about on the other page, but just kind of gives you a little bit of idea of what's in reserve funds, what's in tangible capital assets, what's kind of the unallocated general operations. So you do can kind of just see in a little bit different perspective, I guess. I would say it's positive that the fact that there's a $1.8 million surplus from general operations. That's a positive news story. I know it has decreased a little bit, but that was from, like I was mentioning before, just the rec center project mainly. It's nice to have a little bit of buffer, I guess, in addition to your reserves as well. Because who knows what some future contracts could be, right? I don't know how much it is to replace bridge work and stuff, but there is a little surplus there. So those are the main financial statements. I know there's a lot more. So if you guys had questions when you were looking through this ahead of time on any of the notes, happy to answer that at this time.
Are there any questions or comments? I don't have any. I mean, I think our reports keep getting better and better every year. Again, administrations works really hard throughout the year in providing and staying true to what council is asking for in our budget, what we want in our budget. So I think it's great. I think it's great to see that we can put stuff, invest in the township, right? And moving forward, we can only just keep getting better. So I don't have any other questions on the report. Yep.
Just maybe to make one comment, if we could go back to the page 6 on the short-term investments, and just to clarify on that that 2023 number to 2024 where the changes to the short-term investments. I think the story to this is the fact that the GICs were turned over and they became short-term investments or short-term bank accounts. So it's showing in a different line. The other difference is on the million to say the 500,000 that was put in 2024 is the fact that we used internally, we used a $500,000 amount to carry some of our projects through, and now that's all back in. But it shows as cash now as a financial asset moving forward, because so we didn't generally cash our short-term investments, but we've kind of allocated and moved them and used them kind of for our own purpose for a bit of the struggle of getting through the end of 2024 based on the project. So all that money is still there. It just shows in a different manner.
Yeah, it's a different vehicle almost. Instead of showing, like previously when it said short-term investments, those were GICs that had a due date, had an interest rate. Now they're in high interest savings accounts. So from an accounting standpoint, we consider that cash instead of a short-term investment. So just grouped differently. Difference.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and we made that decision as a council based on the interest rates and the facts that GICs in 2023, 2024 were a very lucrative investment in 2023 and in 2024, now 2025. The interest has significantly gone down, right? So, but no, I just wanted to make that point. Thank you.
Councillor Eby?
Yeah, with what Kristen said, it's been impressive to see, as information has been shared with us consistently, that Mark, you and your team have put systems in place to flag potential vulnerabilities, and then you're able to pivot and respond to them and resolve them or limit our liability. That's just one of the many things that you folks are doing. And I just echo what Councillor Mir said. It gives a great deal of confidence and satisfaction to see such a genuine stewardship of the community's money. So thank you.
And I think from an auditor's perspective, I just want to say thank you to Mark and Sam and the team that's over in place. It's always a nice audit to come to. Everything's well organized. The staff enjoy coming out to Red Rock, except in the snowstorms. I think we had a couple days of snowstorms when the staff were coming up this year, but overall, they all enjoy actually working on this audit, which is a testament, I think, to the administration team. So the other document that you guys would have received as well would just be the library board. So this one's relatively straightforward, so it should be pretty quick to go through here. Once again, if you kind of flip a little bit through to the audit report, there we go. This one right here, this one's a clean audit report under public sector accounting standards. There's no qualification, there's no ARO in the library that we've identified that would be in non-compliance. So this one is a clean opinion. Once again, the other matter paragraph is there. That'll disappear next year. But ultimately for the library board, this is the best audit opinion you can get. So kind of jumping into some of the numbers there on page 5. This one's much simpler here. We've got your financial assets, which is primarily the bank accounts that was coming in there at $11,360. The government remittances receivable of $421. That's just the HST rebates. So whole $400 coming back at the beginning of 2025. On the financial liabilities side, there's not much there. The total financial liabilities came in at about $5,800. So we've got accounts payable and accrued liabilities, which is primarily just source deductions that are due to Canada Revenue Agency or some OMERS payments. Payable to the township, which is kind of just a timing difference there, $3,338. Deferred revenue, there was $500 set aside for library books that were purchased in 2025. And then on the non-financial assets side, the tangible capital assets mainly represent the library books. There's also some computer and some furniture, but the majority of that would be the library collection. So at the end of the day, the accumulated surplus in the library is $55,923. And flipping on to the next page, the statement of operations. We've got total revenue there of $124,343. By far the largest piece there would be the municipal contribution from the township of $117,797. There's also a small grant that's received from the Ministry of Tourism, Culture and Sport for about $4,200 there. Some interest of almost 579,000 or $579, I should say. And then miscellaneous there, 1,700. So last year there was a little bit extra. There was some extra grants that were received, but this year was just kind of the standard one that came through the Ministry of Tourism. On the expense side there, all the expenses came in at 122,783. Nothing that's really shocking when you're looking year over year comparison. The biggest item that's on here would be the salaries and benefits, 91,632 there. Other than that, there's not a ton of changes year over year by large dollar amounts. The only one that kind of sticks out would be the program and staff development, 432 this year versus about 8,100 the previous year. That had to tie in with one of the grants that was received. So you got a little extra funding, so a little bit more was spent. But everything else for the most part is pretty consistent. So at the end of the day, there's a surplus there of 1,560. So all in all, pretty consistent results year over year and pretty consistent to the budget as well. So that's kind of a summary there of the library. So not as much to go through, but still worthwhile to kind of walk through the numbers as well. So I don't know if anyone has any questions about the library, but if you do, happy to answer that as well.
Any questions or comments on the library audit? No? Okay. Thank you for that. Yeah. Pardon me? Oh, Councillor Eby.
It's just our library leadership and staff are so caring and creative and passionate in their service. It's just delightful to see that they're pairing that service with some awesome fiscal management. Like, just way to go, team.
Thanks, Chris. Okay, no other questions or comments on the audit?
All right, that might be all that I have.
Okay, great, thank you. Now let me move this forward. Okay. Can I have a mover and seconder for motion to accept the 2024 audited financial statement from MMP LLP for the Township of Red Rock and the Red Rock Public Library Board? Councillor Smith, Councillor Eby? All in favor? Motion's carried. Thank you very much for coming. We hope you have a safe drive home. Yes.
Thank you.
Take care.
Yep.
Okay, now, minutes from the previous meeting. Everybody seen the minutes of the August 13th meeting? Any errors or omissions? Seeing none, can I have a mover and seconder to approve the minutes of the August 13th meeting? Councillor Muir, Councillor Eby? All in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, now moving on to resolutions. So 6.2, Lake Superior, what is it called? LSN MCA, June 25th, the interim liaison committee meeting. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. 6.3, we have the NOMA sole source TTC subway car agreement. Any questions or comments? Item 6.4, the NOMA 2025 AMO conference wrap up. Questions or comments? 6.5 is the Red Rock Indian Band, the annual Salmon Derby donation request. Councillor Muir.
Yeah, I'd like to support this again this year. We could go with our regular donation. I'd be happy to do that.
Okay, so our regular or normal donation is $250. So is there a mover and seconder for to donate $250 to the Red Rock Indian Band annual salmon derby? Councillor Smith, Councillor Muir, all in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, item 6.6. Summary of Bill 9. There was a public hearing in Thunder Bay. Councillor Eby went and he'd like to provide a little update. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, it was interesting to see when this invitation went out, because there were 6 public meetings happening across the province. Thunder Bay was the one for Northwestern Ontario. All of the presenters engaged by Zoom, but I went in person because I want to make sure I picked up on as much as we could from the intentions of this and the concerns. So I put together for you a 2-page briefing just on the key themes that were raised, discussed, emphasized. There is an overall concern that when problematic behaviors arise with councillors or mayors, there doesn't appear to be adequate systems in place currently to resolve them in a timely manner. And it was brought up that many transgressions go to the courts, which don't resolve it in a timely manner. Involving the Integrity Commissioner, it was found that many municipalities were finding an average cost burden to them about $8,000 per investigation. So at the end of the day, it was the assessment, the opinion of all the participants, regardless of where they fell on perceptions, that there's a serious issue with municipal councillors and mayors not having significant and commensurate consequences. So there was also a very highlighted theme of boundary crossing and problematic behaviors towards leadership and staff in municipalities. So the stated need was agreed upon by everybody. One of the great concerns was not overstepping with a resolution that jeopardized the democratic processes. People are voted into their roles. That needs to be respected. It's just, how do you do that and still deal with problematic behaviors? So going forward, what they heard was there's a need to ensure one standardized policy for all of our municipalities. There's uniformity of interpretation, integrity of process, accessibility and affordability of trained resources, and timely, effective solutions. So the examples that were given, the suggestions given are all outlined in that briefing. And I met with the governing MPPs and the opposition MPP afterwards, just to make sure that they knew that we have that felt need. We see the need for it and we want to be participants going forward. And they're committed to helping us to bring forth a resolution. So thanks for letting me go.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on his report? No? Thank you, Chris. Okay, item 6.7 is the NOMA Northern Highways correspondence. Any questions or comments? Seeing none. Next, we have reports from administration.
Yeah, so I think it's just a summary of the August 14th to September 2nd activities through my office, and I guess the highlight being, if you look at the AMO conference in Ottawa, in the summary of activity, which I'll kind of highlight again in off the back in the discussion and updates. So the AMO annual conference I attended August 17th to the 20th in Ottawa, attending, representing Red Rock, and also sitting in on a lot of the discussions related to the region through the position on the NOMA board. I was able to sit in as many as, I believe it was 11 or 12 different meetings with ministers and delegates in that regard, specifically to Red Rock, as a highlight, having discussions around infrastructure, obviously the bridge and those kind of matters. We're also able to tie in those discussions with energy and mines, as well as Ministry of Northern Economic Development and Growth. Also had the opportunity then to meet with Minister Rickford's office as he's taken a significant lead role in a lot of what BMI and is happening with the industrial site in Red Rock. So I think a very productive conference. Again, the ability to represent and speak to the ministers one-on-one, not just representing Red Rock, but also being able to do it through the lens of NOMA, then allows you to have that profile at no less than 12 different meetings. And I think some really good discussions have happened. It's again, they understand, they hear, and I think it's a process that we continue to go through in order to get where we need to get for projects like bridges and the expansion, say, of economic development and growth. So, and then many different sessions that you can go to as a delegate. So again, that's the highlight of the annual AMO conference. Question period, I think we'll highlight that that will be a resolution attached to this report this evening. So we'll be introducing question period on our agenda effective this evening. Again, it's questions from the audience based on agenda items that the mayor will take and guide as to who's asking those questions at that, or answering those questions at that point. So that's how we'll handle that. The other attachment I put on my report was just one I wanted to bring to the attention of council. It is a discussion of the NWMO. They are going through a process now of looking for a second DGR, so a deep geological repository that'll house intermediate and high level radioactive waste. So what you're looking at in this case is gloves, for example, safety glasses, vests, those kind of things. I wanted to bring the discussion to council just because I think it's going to be something that's highlighted through a lot of emails in the near future. And it was a topic that they requested discussions with a lot of communities, again, through NOMA representing the area for those discussions. They are looking at that second facility. We're not talking about tomorrow. They're talking about timelines like 2040, for example. I just wanted to, I do have an additional discussion based on some of this scheduled later this week. But I just wanted to share the report with council as requested by NWO, and we can continue to have discussions or not based on that moving forward. So, so again, looking to establish that second storage facility for the intermediate and high level radioactivities. Other than that, that's a summary of the report. And again, we can bring more information. Again, we're certainly not in a process. I'm just bringing that as requested to council. They're talking about mirroring it. I'll learn more tomorrow, but they're talking about mirroring this process to the very start of the process that they just selected in Ignace, where a lot of communities entered into a learn more process and they made a selection that way. So that will be something that again, we'll have a lot more information on, but I knew that we're going to start seeing a lot of emails. So I brought this report out to council at this time.
Any questions or comments on Mark's report? Councillor Muir?
Yep, thanks. Excellent work at AMO. I think it's really important for people to note that the relationship that the administration, mayor, and council have with our provincial government and federal government members is extremely important. It goes a long way. It goes a long way when you're down in those meetings and you're getting to know people on a first name basis. It goes a long way for our township. So great work on that again. Question period. Looking forward to that. This is a long time coming. So this is excellent. And yeah, as far as the NWMO, I think maybe, I went through the document. A lot of the legwork has to be done, I would think. The interest, who's interested, who's not. So yeah, definitely keep us posted and we'll see how this goes. Thanks again, Mark.
We're good? Okay. Can I have a mover and seconder for motion to accept the report from administrative activity? Counselor Muir, Counselor Evie? All in favor? Motion is carried. Can I have a mover and seconder to amend the procedural bylaw approving the addition of the question period as a regular agenda item? Counselor Muir, Counselor Smith? All in favor? Motion is carried. We have no bylaws. We have no new business, unfinished business, question period. Are there any questions from the gallery today? On the agenda? Okay, come up. Yep.
And press the button, Dave, just so we can hear. Everybody can hear you.
Welcome, Dave, to our first open.
Hi, just to make sure that your agenda was fulfilled, right? A question is, can people on Zoom send in questions? Can you raise your hand on Zoom or at all, or no? So you have to be in the audience? That's it. That's my question. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Dave. I think it's just easier if they're here in person instead of online. Yeah. It is something that we could look into in the future, but baby steps. Well. Okay, sorry, I lost my page here. Okay, that is the end of question period. Thank you, Dave. We should find out, are we allowed to say people's names? Obviously, right? So
Yeah.
it's open session. Okay. Okay, we have no, we don't have to go back into closed session. So confirming bylaw. Can I have a mover and seconder to confirm the proceedings of council? Counselor Muir, Counselor Evie? All in favor? Motion's carried. Time being 7:41. Just a reminder that the next meeting is Monday, September 15th. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
See you, Dave. Take care, Dave.
Have a good